How we going, church? Good. You're awake now? Oh, awesome, isn't it? What a great morning. So good. We're going to look at the story of Joseph this morning. Who loves Joseph? Fernie does. Fantastic. Excellent, Fern. I love Joseph. He's such an awesome character to study and look at in the Bible. So good. We're just going to pray first. God, thank you so much for this morning. God, I just pray that you would use me to say whatever it is you want me to say, Lord. And nothing but that. In your precious name. Lord, I pray for hearts, Lord, to receive what you have for each and every one of us. And even silly things that might be said that just might speak to someone in some way. And so, Lord, we just pray for open hearts. In your precious name. Amen. All right, guys, if you've got a Bible with you, turn to Genesis. It's at the beginning. And we're looking from about chapter 38, I think it is. No, 39. Genesis chapter 39. Joseph's a great story. I mean, some of you probably are fairly familiar with the story of Joseph. Some of you might not be. And but Joseph he's what we call a type of Christ. As in like a foreshadow of Jesus. Does that make sense? So you can look at his life and you can see certain things about his life that matches up with the life of Jesus. And you can look at a whole bunch of different characters throughout the Old Testament and see a whole bunch of things that they did, or they were, or whatever, and you can see bits of Jesus' of life in that as well. And it's kind of one of those prophetic ways that God liked to say, hey, here's what's coming up. This is what the Christ is going to do. This is what the Christ is going to do. Now remember, Christ isn't his last name. Alright, it's not like Santa Claus, where Claus is his last name or anything like that, right? Jesus Christ means Jesus the Christ, or in Hebrew it would be Jesus the Messiah, or Yeshua. Yeshua is his name that his disciples would have called him. We've kind of anglicised it. I don't know, what's the right word? Something. Glennicised it. It'd be something different if it was Glennicised, I think. And, but with so Jesus is kind of, so it went from Yeshua, which is where we get the name Joshua, right? So Joshua is the same name as Jesus, right? So in Latin America, places, Brazil, Argentina, they have the name Jesus, which is basically Jesus, right? So I saw. Sorry. Jose. Is that's Jesus too, isn't it? Yeah. So and I like I saw this like Vine the other day, and it was something like some evangelist came up to this guy and was like, "Hey, Jesus, did you know Jesus loves you?" And then he calls across the street. He goes, "Hey, Jesus, cuz, do you love me?" He's like, "No, man, I hate you." Wrong Jesus. But anyway, so Yeshua, the Messiah, right? So the Messiah means the anointed one, the chosen one, the one who's come, the dude, the guy. And so Jesus Christ, when we're talking about that, we're talking about his name was Jesus, but he's the Christ. Does that make sense? It's a title. It's not a surname. His name was Jesus of Nazareth. Son of Joseph. That's kind of his title, right? That's how you work out who he is, right? Glenn of Swansea. All right, that's how you work out where I'm from and who I am. Son of Ron. All right. Son of Ron. All right. So we're looking at Joseph. Now, this isn't the same Joseph who was Jesus' stepdad, but this is Jesus' earthly father. But this is Joseph. Now, if we remember last week, do you guys remember what we talked about last week? What story we talked about? Baptism. Yes. What story did we talk about to kind of illustrate baptism? Going through the Red Sea. The Israelites going through the Red Sea, and then 40 days. Jesus fasting and 40 years that the Israelites had. So we're going to step back roughly 400 years from there, okay? So just rewind in your historical mind, clock thingo going on there, and just rewind 400 years, and this is where we are. All right. So there's a guy called Joseph. He's an awesome guy. His dad loves him. His mum has given birth to him in her old age, and so his dad. So we've got Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. His dad's Jacob, right? whose name got changed to Israel. So Jacob loves this guy because he's born to him in his old age. I guess he's like, all right, I'm done with having kids. There's probably no more kids around. Joseph comes along and he's like, oh, this is awesome. This is awesome. I've got one more kid. This is brilliant. Does that kind of make sense? So he has this special fondness for this child, and there's two things that happen, I reckon, when we shower our love on our kids. Well, sorry, I should say there's two things that happened when Jacob showered his love on Joseph. One, Joseph knew he was special and he was amazing and he was fantastic. There was a little problem though. The problem was he didn't shower the same kind of love on all of his kids. And so there was jealousy and rivalry that happened in the family, and a whole bunch of things happened. But it was still God's plan at the same time. We've got to kind of wrestle with this as well. It's God's plan, but it shouldn't have, maybe the dad needed to have also at the same time loved his kids exactly the same way. Does that make sense? So I want to encourage you to have favourites, but I want all your kids to be your favourite. And that's my plan. I try and make sure that my kids know that they're the favourite, but they also know that my other kids are my favourite too. Does that make sense? And so he knew that he was special, that he was incredible, that he was anointed, and everything that he was good was. And something happens to that. When you do that, when your kids know, or when we know that we are loved by incredible measure, we start to think, I can do anything. I can do that. Never done that before, but no one's ever done that before. But I reckon we can do it. Because there's something inside you that starts going, you know what? I reckon this can happen. And so Jacob is saying to Joseph, I love you, you're amazing. He gives him this special coat. And it's just like, it's this awesome coat. It's got beautiful colours on it. It's just like, this is great. It's like a Billabong jumper on steroids or something like that, right? It's just beautiful. Okay, and so here's this coat, and everyone knows, and he knows that he's special. And it says this in verse 2 of 39. I'll just step back one more little bit. Sorry, guys. There's the rivalry coming on, and Joseph's brothers don't like him, right? Because he's the special kid. And so they think, it's a great idea, let's kill him. Great idea? No, terrible idea. But they think, let's kill him, let's get rid of him so that Dad will spend his attention, put it on us. And so they have this plan, they go to kill him. So they go to kill him, and then they get to this, there's some slave traders come along, and they think, oh, well, maybe we should kill him. Let's just sell him off to the slave traders. All right, better idea. At least you're getting some cash out of it. And so they got some cash from selling Joseph, and he finds himself in Egypt. So Joseph's in Egypt, and he's been sold as a slave against his will, and now he's in the house of Potiphar. And so this is where we take it up at Genesis chapter 39, verse 2. It says this, the Lord was with Joseph, and he prospered him, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. So not only like he's not just living, like if you're a slave, you don't get to live in the house of the master, do you? But here, straight away, we see that this guy, the Lord has favoured him, and all of a sudden, the master's like, well, come and live in my house. I've got a spare room out the back, you can live out there, not way out where it's just terrible, right? And so he says, and when his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favour in his eyes, and he became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything he owned. From the time he put him in charge of his household and all that he was owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of Joseph. The blessing of the Lord was on everything Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field. So he left in Joseph's care everything that he had, with Joseph in charge. He did not concern himself with anything except the food that he ate. Well, he's a man after my heart. You can't leave the food up to somebody else, right? You've got to make sure you're sorting that out. But here we see that the Lord is blessing Joseph, and he knows that he's special. He's like, well, here I am. I'm a slave. I'm going to do the best I can. Great attitude, isn't it? Incredible attitude. If I was a slave, just been sold into slavery, I'd be like, leave this. It's ridiculous. I can't stand it. I want to kill my brothers. If I ever get a chance to, I will. You know, and this is, you know, you'd be like, you'd be fuming, and you'd be doing whatever you had to do. Yes, sir. Vacuum the floor. But you wouldn't be like, all right, you're going to vacuum that floor and you make sure every little bit's done, would you? You wouldn't be like that at all. Well, I wouldn't be like that at all, okay? I'll just put it out there. And so, but this is Joseph, and he's done an amazing thing here as a slave. And if we fast forward a little bit, we see that, that Joseph's, Potiphar's wife thinks he's rather good looking as well, all right? So, and she's probably thinking, well, if he's good at pretty much everything he does, then, you know, maybe he'll be good at something else. And so he's been invited to prove that theory. And he says, no, look, I can't do this, it's not right. And, you know, like, I mean, who knows what would be going through the head of a whole bunch of people. Maybe she was a really good-looking woman, too. And he's like, well, I don't really like a slave anyway. I work with a slave. Why shouldn't I? I'm just saying, does anyone have bad thoughts, you know? Is it just me? I'm not saying I had that thought. I just put it out there. I'm just saying. It's confession time. Pastor's confession time today. All right, so,
you think yourself a hole, aren't you?
I think it's, well, Belle's with the kids. I can say whatever I want. So, we're all human. What I'm trying to say, I want some video. No, it's terrible. Okay, so just been reminded by Steve. Thanks. But the point is, there's all sorts of things that go on in our mind, especially when we're hurt, especially when we're angry, especially when somebody has done something wrong against us. Right? You know, I find it particularly difficult on the soccer field when I've been wronged. You know, yesterday we got an absolute beating. We got hammered by this team was just way better than us, and I was playing goalkeeper. And so I was just on the floor like all the time. It's just like as soon as I got up the floor, I had to get back up and get back down again. We got an absolute beating. And there was this guy at the end, and believe it or not, we lost 3-0, even though we absolutely got hammered. Like, we should have been lost, we should have lost 10-0. But we lost 3-0, and right at the end, we got a free kick right down near in our half, deep in our half, like right near me, right? I'm goalkeeper. Right, and our player like moved the ball further than it should have been to take the free kick. So he shouldn't have done it, but maybe he did.
Is there a video?
There's no video recording of it. Same as the Jets goal. The goal against the Jets. There's no video of that either, apparently. But we're not going to go there today because we moved on. We're not bitter about that anymore, are we? Oh, this is too funny. All right, so, and this guy is just like, oh, ref, he's moved it too far. And I've had, okay, I don't need to say anything, but I do. Like, hey, you're winning 3-0. What's the matter? We weren't going to score because we were 5 metres further. We didn't even get into their half like 3 times or something like that, you know, like it just didn't matter. And he's like, well, but it's got to be fair. I was like, oh, who cares? That was my attitude, right? That was my attitude. I didn't need to say it. I mean, obviously I was right, and obviously... but I didn't have to do anything, did I? I could have just, you know, just with a good attitude, just kept vacuuming, you know? I could have just done that. What's that, Jeff?
Bring the ball back.
Well, we did. We had to because the ref said, "Yeah, all right, put it back." So we brought the ball back, and guess what? We didn't score. And so here he is. He's got a great attitude. He's doing the right thing, even though he's presented with this opportunity. And he said, "No, I'm not doing it. It's not right. It's not the right thing to do." And so he's been offered this opportunity a number of times, and eventually she's so upset that he hasn't taken up the opportunity that she She cries, you know, rape, and of course Potiphar Potiphar listens to his wife and says, you know, this is what this guy tried to do. It didn't happen, but you know, I got out of here, you know. So, and then he gets thrown in jail. It's getting worse, right? So he's gone from being, you know, loved by his father with a special coat. He's been thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and then he's now he's in jail. But just at the end of this chapter, it says this. But while Joseph was in there in prison, the Lord was with him, and he showed him kindness and granted him favour in the eyes of the prison warden. So the warder put Joseph, check out this, in charge of all those that were held in the prison. And he was made responsible for all that was done there. The warder paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care, because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. Isn't that incredible? Can I just say that we need to live with a kingdom spirit, not a poverty spirit. Poverty, I'm not talking about money. It's got nothing to do with money. We're talking about whatever circumstance you find yourself in, I'm going to influence that circumstance. I'm going to change things around me. Kind of a victim mentality of saying, well, this happened to me, and terrible things happen to us, right? And that's not good, right? And it's not right, and it shouldn't have happened. But we've got to make a decision. Are we going to live with the victim mentality and say, well, you know, this is why I'm here because of this. You know, this happened to me, and it shouldn't have happened to me, and this is why I'm here where I am. Well, you can do that, or you can say, well, I'm going to make the best of the situation that I'm right in, and I'm going to influence it, and I'm going to change it. I'm going to be an influencer. I'm going to change the culture around me. And so for me, this is a really great Mother's Day message, in the sense of you really need to say you are in charge of your family. Whether or not you're partnering with somebody else in that or not, or you're on your own. You are in charge of your family, and it is your job to be an influencer. It is your job to say, here's where I am right now, but I've got the Lord with me. And I can change anything. I'm struggling with sickness, but I've got the Lord with me. And He can change that. I'm struggling with my finances, but I've got the Lord with me. And that can change. And with His help, I'm going to make it change. I'm struggling with this relationship that I've got with but the Lord can change that. And the Lord can influence that. And through your prayers and through your declarations and through you being nice and not telling the guy off in the soccer field, you can see these things change, can't you? Yeah. You know what? I was annoyed at? After the game, I was really annoyed. And a guy from the other team came round with Super Dupers and offered us all one. Wasn't that special? And I was like, oh, I'm such an idiot. I wasn't that guy that wanted the ball to go back, but anyway. But we're all just human. We're all just lovely, trying to do whatever we can imperfectly. But we can be influencers and not be influenced. All right. So this is Joseph's story, and then later on, so he's in prison, and we find out about the cupbearer and the baker's dreams, and I'm going to skip over that for now. And then Pharaoh has a dream. No one can interpret it except for they're like, hey, there's this guy called Joseph. He can interpret dreams. This is awesome. So Pharaoh comes to this guy, says, well, bring him to me. Let's check it out. And basically, Joseph is the reason why Egypt became a superpower. Did you realise that? So here we see that Pharaoh's dream was that there was basically going to be 7 years of abundance and 7 years of drought. But he didn't know that's what it meant. That's what his dream was about, right? And so Joseph interpreted that dream for him. So there's going to be 7 years of abundance and then 7 years of famine. And then so Pharaoh says so Joseph says, hey, this is a good plan. Store up some stuff, hang on to it, and then you'll be right for the 7 years. Pharaoh says this in verse 39 of chapter 41. Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Incredible. He was in charge of Potiphar's house. This guy's a leader, isn't he? He's a leader's leader. Potiphar's house, he gets thrown into jail, he gets put in charge of everything in the jail, and then he meets the Pharaoh, and then Pharaoh puts him in charge of everything. So it says, you shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you. So, Joseph, I'm giving you authority to do everything. You're awesome, I love you, and I don't want to do anything myself as well, and I'm just going to sit on my throne. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. And it's an incredible story. And this is why the brothers end up coming to Egypt. So they have the 7 years of awesomeness, 7 years of drought come along, and the brothers are like, we've got no food. Dad says, go to Egypt. I've heard that Egypt is selling grain. This is where Egypt gets all its money from. This is where Egypt becomes a superpower, because Egypt starts selling everything to everyone else. It's like, I mean, if you haven't had anything to eat in ages, how much will you pay for a box of Weet-Bix? $8. So I mean, let's go a bit further. You haven't eaten for 3 weeks, and there's a box of Weet-Bix around. Now, how much are you going to pay for it? What if it's the only box of Weet-Bix in the world left, and there's nothing else to eat? It's priceless, isn't it? You sell everything, including yourself. You say, I'll give you everything I've got. I'll give you my house. I'll give you and myself. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do. Well, that's what you've got to do in that kind of situation. And that's what millions of people around Egypt at that time did, because like, we've got no food, we got nothing. I don't care what the price is, just give me something. I need to feed my family. And so Egypt became this incredible superpower, and that's kind of why and then Joseph invited his brothers to come along and live there as well. But I want to talk about, just on Mother's Day, this is a good day to think about this. Just think a little bit about the forgiveness and the reconciliation that happens. So the brothers come along, and they don't know that Joseph is the guy they're talking to. Right? He's wearing he's got his eye makeup on. He's got his fancy looking hat on. And he's walking like this. Alright.
You going to start singing yet?
No, I won't. But I better say this because this is about my mum. My mum's not with us anymore. But when I think I was about 9 or 10, and I was playing for a little school concert, playing the keyboard for a school concert, and I played "Walk Like an Egyptian." That was the song I chose to play. It was like, because it was a cool song at the time. And Liam, do you know Walk Like an Egyptian? No, I didn't think so. Who remembers Walk Like an Egyptian? Alright, good. Alright. Fantastic. Showing your age there. Alright. Okay. So I was 9 or 10 or something when I played this song, so that just sort of tells you something, doesn't it? Alright, so 500 years ago. And so Walk Like an... I'm playing this, and I'm saying to Mum, I'm going to do like this in the middle of the song. And she's like, don't you dare do that and embarrass me. And guess what? I did that anyway. So I'm sorry, Mum. So I got into big trouble as well. But the kids loved it, and I was a celebrity for at least half of lunchtime. Alright, so he's walking like an Egyptian, he's hanging out with his makeup on, they can't tell it. I mean, it's 20 years, something's gone past by this stage. and his brothers come along. And then he puts in, kind of sets them up so they'll come back and stuff like that. He doesn't introduce himself straight away to them. And I reckon Joseph's on a journey still. Because forgiveness isn't easy, is it? Sometimes it can be hard. He had lots of time to work on it, and I reckon he worked on it quite well in the jail, with lots of time to work on it. It's like, why am I here? I can't believe my brothers put me here. But he's still working on his forgiveness. And obviously, because the Lord was with him. But there's still, have you ever forgiven and then you've got to kind of forgive again? And then you think you've forgiven, and you've really forgiven, and then all of a sudden you've got to, and then you're in the shower and you're thinking about stuff and you're like, oh, forgive him for that. Like God brings up something else and you're like, oh, I really haven't forgiven him for that. This is what's going on for Joseph. This is what I think is going on for Joseph. And so eventually, he has a few interactions with him. Eventually he's like, I'm your brother! They're like, what? And they're like ready to die because they're like, this guy's the most powerful man in the universe. And we sold him and nearly killed him. And now he's got all the power over us. Anyway, he says, look, I forgive you. It was God's plan. And this incredible story. So I encourage you to read that whole story. It's a beautiful, incredible story. And then he says, come live here. You're going to be the best land there is. So when they came to Egypt, they weren't slaves. Joseph came to Egypt as a slave, but his family were free. There's a lot of symbolism we can see there with Jesus, can't we? Jesus came, died for us so that we could live. So good, isn't it? Sold out. Jesus was he's the guy that did everything we should have done and took our place in every way. When Jesus teaches his disciples the Lord's Prayer in Matthew chapter 6, you can read about it. The Father in heaven, hallowed be your name, your kingdom come. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily. Forgive us our debts, as we also forgive us debtors. Or another translation could be transgressors or sins. Forgive us our sins, as we've also forgiven our sinners. Forgive those who sin against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And then Jesus says this is not part of the prayer, but he at least, he wants to teach on this one little part of it at least. Or at least Matthew is recording this part of it for us. I mean, Jesus taught on everything, for sure. He says, if you forgive people when they sin against you, your Heavenly Father will also forgive you. Well, if you don't forgive people their sins, your Father will not forgive your sins too. Forgiveness is really hard, but it's essential. Sets you free. Yeah. Well, yeah. It doesn't mean we like what's happened to us. It doesn't mean we put ourselves in harm's way, possibly. Again, we may need good boundaries. Healthy, safe boundaries. With people that have hurt us in the past. But we do need to forgive. And Joyce Meyer puts it like this: unforgiveness is kind of like drinking poison and expecting that the other person will get hurt. Doesn't really happen. I mean, half the people we don't forgive are people who have no idea that we haven't forgiven them. Or don't even know that they've done anything wrong. I mean, sometimes people know, but then there's other times that people are completely unaware. Like, what are you talking about? I just had a conversation with someone this week, and they were saying how somebody had done something, and they were upset at them, and he said to them, "Hey, I'm upset with you for this, But he said, and he's a good Christian guy, awesome guy, and he said, look, I've forgiven you. He's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. What have you forgiven me for? And so here's the thing, when we don't forgive, we're only hurting ourselves. And it also comes with a condition. It's about one of the only things it does. It says, if you forgive, then you'll be forgiven. And I like it almost kind of reversed in a way. I like to forgive because I've been forgiven. That makes sense? It helps me. I love because I've been loved. We know that's true. We love because He first loved us. And so this morning, I mean, just as we reflect, Mother's Day is a good time to reflect on family. It's a good time, and sometimes it hurts for some of us. Some of us, it's just a complete celebration, and it's fantastic. But for others, it's not always that. And so I want to encourage you to just have a time right now of just forgiveness. Just letting go. Just letting go. So just quietly where you are. If there is, I mean, there might not be, you may not need that, but if for anyone who does need to just, particularly thinking about a parent that may have let you down or hurt you in some way, just encourage you to do your best to release forgiveness, even if they're not with us anymore. Holy Spirit, I just ask that you would help us to be able to forgive too. God, thank you for your forgiveness. And Lord, we just release forgiveness to those that have hurt us in the past. Lord, help us to be people of influence in whatever situation or circumstance we find ourselves in, whatever place of work we find ourselves in, or at school. Help us to be people that change things for the better. And God, we know we need your help for that. We know that it's pretty much impossible without you, God. But we also know, God, that nothing is impossible with you as we live the life, God, that you've called us to live. If you've not accepted Jesus as your Lord and Saviour, today is an awesome day to do that. The Bible talks about that today is the day of salvation. And today is always called today. Today is a great day to give your heart to the Lord. I did it in my 20s. I was an atheist. Changed and rocked my world. So I just want to encourage you. He died for you. He loves you. And He gave up His life for you so that you may have life. So you may have eternal life and you may have life to the full. And so, if there is anyone who wants to accept Jesus as their Lord and Saviour, I just want to encourage you to do that. You do that in your heart. And you just have to pray this from your heart. God, thank you for sending Jesus to die on the cross for me. Jesus, thank you for taking my place. I ask for forgiveness, and I ask that you would make me new and take away all my sin. I turn away from that life and I turn to a life of following you. Holy Spirit, give me power to live the life that I'm meant to live. And I thank you, Jesus, for dying on the cross for me. You're amazing. We love you.